Playoff rankings time. Let's do
go. Welcome to episode 4 of Paige and Micah in the PM. I'm Paige Hunter.
And I'm Micah Farmer.
And wow, we've got a good episode today. So much happened in the football world, so let's dive right on in. Starting off with our weekly game recaps, we've got an upset as the Kansas Jayhawks beat the number 6 Oklahoma Sooners at home. Micah, you want to tell us a little bit about this game?
Yeah, this was a very fun game. Lightning delay in the middle of it. Oklahoma came out firing out of the lightning delay, but it just wasn't enough. Jason Bean played really well for the Jayhawks, 218 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and adding a rushing TD as well. Then Devin Neal played amazing, 25 carries, 112 and a TD. Kansas's offense was just better than Oklahoma in this one. Kansas' defense was better than Oklahoma in this one. And when you get that, you get the recipe for an upset, and you get goalposts in a lake, which is exactly what the Kansas fans did.
That Oklahoma defense giving up 443 yards. That's a lot of yards they're giving up.
But way too much.
With the playoff rankings coming out soon, what does this mean for this Oklahoma team?
Oklahoma's done for their playoff chances, and they're just looking for a New Year's Six bowl at this point, I think.
Yeah, a little unfortunate, but it happens. Over in Tucson, another upset as number 11 Oregon State was taken down by Arizona in a battle.
Yeah, very physical game, just how Oregon State likes it. But Arizona beat them at their own game. Noah Fita played great in this one, 25 of 32, 275, 3 touchdowns a pick. Great game from him.
Really good game.
Michael Wiley with the game-winning touchdown towards the end of the game for Arizona to put them ahead. And then Oregon State, this defense, which has been so highly vaunted, giving up way too many yards in this one.
363 total yards.
Yeah.
That's a lot of yards.
Yeah, you can't win doing that. And Oregon State now, I think, has lost any chance of their Pac-12 title hopes this year.
Unfortunately, yes. More battle in the Pac-12 and another close call for USC as they narrowly survived Cal 50-49. And we talk a lot about this USC team and the underperformance of the offense this past couple of weeks. A much needed win for them, but again, they're still struggling.
I don't think they deserve this win, to be completely honest with you. Caleb Williams played really well, as he always does, but the defense continues to be horrific. They allowed career highs for Cal quarterback Fernando Mendoza in passing yards, passing touchdowns. They allowed a career high for rushing TDs for Cal running back Jaden Ott. If you're allowing 3 career highs in one game, you shouldn't expect to win that game. I think Cal kind of collapsed at the end of this one, and it's just very disappointing because you love to see these smaller teams pull off these upsets like this, and you hate to see USC keep getting away with this over and over.
Yeah, Caleb Williams going 23 for 40, 269 yards, throwing 2 touchdowns to save his team. But, I mean, I think at this point, his chance of going to New York for the Heisman they're done.
He might still get there on name alone, but I don't think he'll win it.
I agree. No repeat for him. Now it's time to head into the Conference Center and discuss what these conferences look like as we get closer to the end of the season. Starting off with the ACC, Micah, I think you have an apology to issue.
Yeah, well, to the entire North Carolina Tar Heels fan base, I am so sorry for cursing your team.
You cursed them.
All year, I loved this North Carolina team. Then a couple weeks ago, I finally opened my mouth. I'm like, I think they could win the ACC. And they immediately lost to Virginia and lost to Georgia Tech. And part of that, I think, is completely me disregarding the North Carolina defense, because you know how much I harp on USC.
Yes.
No defense, they can't win, no defense. This North Carolina team is exactly the same.
Arguably worse.
Yeah, I don't know why I didn't see it, to be completely honest with you. Maybe I'm just looking at rose-colored glasses, Drake May, so I don't know what I'm doing, but need to figure it out. This North Carolina team is not who I thought they were.
Yeah, May going for 310 yards, 2 touchdowns, but, I mean, at the end of the night, this defense is just not good. And you know what? Your offense can play as good as you want, but defense wins championships, and this defense is not going to win any championships.
You know who does have a good defense, though? The Florida State Seminoles.
Yeah,
they absolutely destroyed Wake Forest this week, winning 41-16. What do you think about Jordan Travis in this one?
Is that Heisman campaign I hear?
Could be.
I think so. Travis is currently sitting at a little over 2,000 yards, 18 touchdowns on the season, 2 interceptions, but he's ranked 7th QBR. I think that should be a little bit higher, and I think that if Florida State State's offense keeps performing the way it should be and the way it is now, that we could very much see him in New York.
For sure, and I think especially if they win the ACC, you'll see him 100%. There, and now I think they have a fairly easy path to do so. Apart from one team that had another great performance this weekend in the Louisville Cardinals, they improved to 7-1 this week, and a big win at home over Duke, 23-0.
Yeah, you know, this Duke team playing without Riley Leonard again. Well, he played, but played through an injury. And, I mean, Leonard went 9 for 23, 121 yards, and a pick. And that just, without your quarterback, your offense starts to fall apart. And we've seen the past couple of weeks, this Duke team just on the decline. So, unfortunately, I think their ACC hopes might be done. But, I mean, Louisville held them to just 202 yards. Like, that's really good.
I think you have to give a shout out to running back Jawar Jordan for the Cardinals in this one as well. Had 21 carries for a career high 163 yards and 2 touchdowns. Great game for him, helping this Louisville team win easily.
Yeah, you know what team did not win? Was Clemson. They lost 24-17 to NC State. Micah, what do we think about this Clemson team?
They are flat out not good.
I think
the
so,
offense
too.
Cannot hold on to the football. Tied for the FBS lead in fumbles right now. It's inexcusable. Cade Klubnik is not playing well.
No.
The defense is doing as much as they can, but even with all the talent they have over there, it still just seems out of sync. And while I don't think Devin Sweeney's job is in danger at all, I think he needs to start figuring out how to utilize the transfer portal and maybe get some better position coaches in there to develop players, because the last 3 years they've just been on a harsh downward trend.
Yeah, I mean, this is no Trevor Lawrence-led team, and unfortunately when you have those big stars that carry you so far and, you know, making you a powerhouse, once they leave, you gotta, you know, filter in and replenish what you've lost, and I think Clemson just has not done a good job of that. And so I think as of right now, their time as a college football power is not present, but we'll see how they utilize the transfer portal, like you said, and see if they can bounce back from that. Our ACC pick of the week is Virginia Tech at number 15 Louisville. Micah, how are we feeling about this one?
I think this could be a better game than people expect. Virginia Tech is 3-1 in the ACC right now. Louisville obviously 7-1, 4-1 in conference. I think Virginia Tech keeps it close, but I do think Louisville comes away with the win.
All right, moving over to the Big Ten. Ohio State beating Wisconsin 24-10. I don't think this game was a little bit closer than it should have been, Micah.
Yeah, Braylon Allen for Wisconsin was really the spark plug for them in this one. 10 carries for 50 yards until going down with injury in the second quarter. Absolutely brutal. I think if he doesn't get injured, Wisconsin maybe even wins this game, because the Ohio State defense looked lost with him on the field. Kyle McCord, I still have doubts about. I don't care what anyone else says about him, to be honest. He keeps throwing picks in these big games, 2 in this one.
He's just not the guy.
Yeah, he keeps getting bailed out by Marvin Harrison Jr., in my opinion, who had 6 catches for 123.
Doing really good.
Both of Kyle McCord's touchdowns came via Marvin Harrison. So I think if you put McCord in a shootout, he's going to struggle big time. I do not trust this Ohio State team at all.
Yeah, but an Ohio State team who, you know, is ranked pretty highly, and we'll talk about it a little bit once we go into our CFP rankings, but just that offense is really going to have to perform well if they deserve a top spot. Another team with a narrow win was Penn State, escaping the Indiana Hoosiers 33-24. Very surprising game. What do you think?
Yeah, I felt like I was watching a basketball movie with how the Hoosiers were playing in the first half of this one, but unfortunately they could not keep it together. Brennan Sorsby played really well for them, though, going 13 of 19 for 269, 3 touchdowns and a pick. So very good from him. Penn State came out flat. It was plain to see after the loss to Ohio State. You could tell they were deflated.
Didn't lead until the third quarter.
Yeah, they were able to bounce back, though, and secure the win. And while I don't think you can call this an impressive win because you barely beat Indiana, I do think you have to give them credit for sticking with it and not letting them coming out flat ruin their entire game.
Yeah, Drew Aller going for 210 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. But, I mean, at the end of the night, it was his performance that saved this Penn State team.
Yeah.
And an upset in the Big Ten, Northwestern defending their home turf to beat Maryland 33-27.
Yeah, this was a very fun game. I think it went under the radar a bit this weekend, but the player for me in this one is Edge Aiden Hubbard for Northwestern. He had 5 solo tackles and 3 sacks. Just a pure disruptive force. Had half of Northwestern's sacks, 6 total on Talia Tungavailoa in this one. Maryland offensive line, they really let themselves down in this one. And then Tagovailoa played well, throwing for 274, 3 touchdowns. Did throw a pick, but the brutal thing for him was his fumble in the red zone that led to a Northwestern score that ended up being the difference in this one.
Yeah, you know, can't allow those fumbles. Our Big Ten game of the week is number 3 Ohio State at Rutgers. Micah, how are we feeling?
Rutgers by 1,000,000.
Oh my goodness.
Even though they're 6-2, I don't think you can trust them in this one. Even though I just said I don't trust Ohio State, I think the talent gap is too big in this one. Yeah. I think they go into New Jersey and take care of business.
Yeah, Ohio State has the better offense and defense, and I think as long as they perform to the best ability they can, then easy win for them. Over in the Big 12, we talked a little bit about the Kansas upset. How does that change the potential for championship?
Well, you look at the Big 12 right now, and there's about 6 different teams that can end up in Arlington at the end of the year for the championship game. Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas State, Iowa State, Oklahoma State all sit at 4-1 in conference, and Kansas is right there at 3-2 with the win over Oklahoma. Yep. So, while I do think Texas makes it there for sure, I'm not sure about this Oklahoma team as much. I think you could see a team like Kansas State easily put themselves into that game. So I think Texas is the Big 12's best shot at a playoff team this far in the season, and the conference is going to try very hard not to cannibalize itself this year.
And speaking of Texas, despite missing Quinn Ewers and his arm, they did beat BYU 35-6 in Austin. A big win for them. Yeah,
Malik Murphy played really well in this one. 170 yards, 2 touchdowns. Did throw a pick, but overall took pretty good care of the football in this one. Pretty conservative. They rode the running game in this one. Jonathan Brooks, 16 carries for 98 and a touchdown, and they also rode the defense. 2 sacks, 2 picks, and held BYU under 300. If the defense keeps playing like this, they're going to be very tough to beat this year.
Yeah. Ending our Big 12 section, we got a quick recap. Ohio State beating Baylor 30-18, Oklahoma beating Cincinnati 45-13, and Kansas State beating Houston 41-0. Our pick this week is number 25 Kansas State at number 7 Texas. Micah, how are we feeling?
This could be a very close game.
Yeah.
Kansas State, I think after the loss to Missouri, a lot of people wrote them off, but that was when Missouri was unranked. We didn't know what Missouri was at that point in the year. They've been playing well the rest of the year so far, but I think Texas is just too much in this one. I think they win at home pretty easily.
I think with playoff stakes on the line too, Texas is really going to, show their dominance in this game. And in the Pac-12, we have Oregon going into Salt Lake City and beating Utah 35-6 in a much-needed big win for them.
Yeah, I was very impressed with Oregon in this one. Utah's previously been a trap game for them, especially in Salt Lake City, and they just completely dominated this one. The defense was amazing. 2 sacks, 6 tackles for loss, and 2 picks for nickelback Tysheem Johnson, who played great in this one. In the offense, Bo Nix was amazing again.
Yes.
248 yards, 2 touchdowns, added a rushing touchdown as well. And I think he's going to find himself in New York at the end of the year for the Heisman ceremony at this rate.
I do too, for sure. I mean, he's played a lot of games, but he's gained a lot of experience too. And this Oregon team performing really well with him at quarterback.
You'd hope he has experience. Most starts of any quarterback ever.
For sure. He gets it from Auburn. But no, I totally agree. I think Bo Nix is someone we need to see in New York once the season is over. We talked a little about USC. They do remain second in the Pac-12 after escaping Cal, but they do have a game at Oregon in 2 weeks, and I think that's really going to decide a lot of things in the Pac-12.
Yeah, Washington right now undefeated. Oregon and Southern Cal both with 1 conference loss, so that game is going to be massive for who will probably rematch Washington in the title game, but I'm worried about this Washington defense right now, honestly. They gave up way too many yards versus Stanford, almost 500, just 5 shy at 495. And if you're giving up similar numbers as Colorado, that's not where you want to be.
Yeah.
So despite the offense getting back on track in this one, I now have questions about the Washington defense.
Yeah, Michael Penix going for 369 yards, 4 touchdowns, and a pick. But, what I just said earlier, defense wins championships, and if you want to win this championship, you're going to need a defense that's a little more stable. But between Oregon and Washington, it's going to be a real battle to see who gets into the playoffs and who doesn't. The playoff rankings did come out this week. We'll dive into that a little bit more in a second. But, this Pac-12 conference going out with a bang. I'm a little sad now that it's ending. Our game of the week in the Pac-12 is number 5 Washington at number 24 USC. We talked a little bit about this. It's a big matchup and it's going to decide a lot.
Yeah, I honestly think there's a chance USC wins this game. Both defenses are not playing well right now. Both offenses are high flying. Although I do think Washington is just that bit more well-rounded, just slightly better off the edge in their pass rush, and I think that gives them the edge in this one. I think Washington wins.
I do too. We have seen miracles happen before in the Coliseum. That's an incredible environment, but this Washington offense can't lie. So over in the SEC, Georgia asserts their dominance in Jacksonville, beating the Florida Gators 43-20. Carson Beck looking pretty good. I have a little more confidence in him now, but tell us a little bit about this offense without Brock Bowers.
Yeah, so I think everyone going into this week was thinking, how's this Georgia offense going to look? No Brock Bowers. Everyone's concerned. Is Georgia going to be able to function without Brock Bowers? And they said, we're just going to throw to Ladd McConkey. And he had 6 catches for 135 yards and a touchdown, absolutely diced up the Florida secondary in this one. And I think that's honestly very impressive. When you add that to 171 team rushing yards as well, this offense is not missing a beat whatsoever, and they almost looked better in this game. So I think that's very scary for any team having to play Georgia later this year.
I think it's also important to note Graham Mertz's performance. He is currently tied with Carson Beck in the nation for passing touchdowns. He's only thrown 2 picks all season. He threw for 230 yards, 2 touchdowns. But, I mean, this Florida team's got a rough schedule ahead of them.
Absolutely brutal. They have Arkansas at home, then at LSU, at Missouri, Florida State at home. I think that's 1-3 right there.
I mean, can't lie with that. Another big game, Tennessee beating Kentucky 33-27. Tennessee jumping out with an early lead. They were able to hold on.
Yeah, you saw the Devin Leary that Kentucky was expecting to get all season in this game, going 28 of 39 for 372 and 2 touchdowns. The issue for Leary was the rest of his team decided to stay at home. The defense was brutally bad. Ray Davis only had 2.6 yards per carry, which after the season he's having is very disappointing for Kentucky. And Tennessee, despite having to be held to a lot of field goals in this one, not being able to punch in as much as they maybe would have liked, still won this game with relative ease.
A good win for them, and one that they definitely needed. Now let's highlight our Auburn Tigers getting their first conference win, beating Mississippi State 13-27. Christmas came early, Micah. We finally got our passing offense. Can we just give a round of applause?
I know. I honestly forgot what it looked like to see an Auburn team throw the football effectively. And Peyton Thorne in this one, 230 yards, 3 touchdowns. Ended up being the 3rd highest graded quarterback by PFF in the nation this week.
I mean, send him to New York after that. Just kidding.
Maybe if he gets signed to the Giants practice squad. No. But let's pump the brakes on that a little bit, but still very impressive from this Auburn team. I know Mississippi State, not the highest level of competition by any means, but to get an SEC win is so important for this program right now.
A win is a win, and that is what they needed. It is officially the 1 year of the firing of Brian Harsin, and a lot of talk about how Hugh Freeze was going to do coming in. But I think for this being his first season, this was a good win for him. And I don't know, I have a lot of hope for these upcoming seasons. Also in the SEC, Ole Miss beating Vandy 33-7 to move to 7-1. They could still win out of the SEC West. Now this is Vandy we're talking about, but a really good win for Ole Miss.
Yeah, I think you need to highlight the defense in this one. We've been so quick to give credit to this offense all year. Jackson Dart, Quinshon Judkins. I know it's Vandy, but they gave up less points than Georgia did against this Vandy team. This Ole Miss defense is playing really well right now. They had a good performance against Auburn. Granted, 2 not great offenses, but for a team that is going to need some help to make it to the SEC title game later this year, they would need Alabama to lose twice in conference. Being able to rely on your entire team to put in a full performance like this with your defense and your offense both humming, I think is very important for the Rebels.
I agree. Some big games coming up in the SEC this weekend, with LSU traveling to Tuscaloosa in the game of the week to take on Alabama, and Micah's favorite team, Missouri, traveling to Athens to take on Georgia. So, give you your little Mizzou minute there.
Well, this is the week. Ever since about week 3, week 4 this season, I've been saying this Missouri team is going to take it to Georgia, and they're going to beat Georgia. Georgia right now is looking the best they have all year, but I still think this Missouri team is good enough. Georgia usually likes to keep Kamari Lassiter, their best corner, by a mile on one side of the field. Unless they want to start having him travel with Luther Burden, Missouri's going to be able to find some good matchups, I think, take advantage of those. And then if Lassiter does travel, maybe you get some secondary confusion with a new scheme being put in. So I really don't know that Georgia's secondary is built to stop this Missouri team, and because of that, I think Missouri wins this one.
Well, Micah, you've got me hopeful, and I hope a lot of our viewers hopeful, but I mean, I'm rooting for Missouri this weekend, so hopefully they win. We'd have a very good, I'd give you like a Micah's 7 Mizzou minutes.
Yes. The next show, if Missouri wins, is just me in all Missouri gear, just yelling into the camera with a shaker. Let's go!
Amazing. To close out the Conference Center, we're going to give some love to the little guys. Number 17, Air Force, improving to 8-0 with a win over Colorado State. And number 23, James Madison, improving 8-0 with a win over Old Dominion. But unfortunately for them,
they can't go to a bowl game because NCAA regulations are stupid. They just moved up from the FBS to from the FCS to the FBS last year, and since it's still their second year as an FBS team, they aren't allowed to play in a bowl game, which is so dumb. If they're good enough, let them play in a bowl game. I don't understand this at all. Give credit to your undefeated teams, regardless of what conference they're in. Speaking of undefeated teams, you said Air Force, America's team, still playing really well, winning a snow game versus Colorado State. They look very impressive this year. They have the best rushing offense in the nation, so we'll have to see if they can finish out their undefeated season.
We will. Ending the Conference Center, Florida's score looks a little different this week as the first CFP rankings came out. So to change things up, we're now going to call this section the Pick Six, where we compare the weekly rankings to what we think the top 6 should be. So, starting off, our top 6 this week, promo please. Ohio State coming in at number 1, Georgia at 2, Michigan at 3, Florida State at 4, Washington at 5, and Oregon at 6. Right off the bat, Micah, your reaction yesterday when I told you that it was Ohio State at number 1, something I will never forget. So let's just talk about this for a second.
This is ridiculous.
I agree.
So
we've been knocking Ohio State all
We have. My only thought process here is that you're looking at the Penn State win and the Notre Dame win, and you're saying, okay, Ohio State has the best wins. My issue with that is Penn State has not looked good recently, almost lost to Indiana. Then Notre Dame, you're putting them all the way down at 15. So
I have issues with the CFP committee for that.
If those are your 2 big wins that you're saying putting Ohio State at 1, why isn't Washington at 1 with their win over Oregon if that's your thought process? Then if you're going by which team has looked the best this season, I know there's some off-the-field stuff, but it is clearly Michigan. They're murdering everyone. I think Georgia looks better than Ohio State right now. I think Oregon and Florida State look better than Ohio State right now, honestly. But with Oregon's 1 loss, I understand them being below everything else. But I just do not understand this at all. You're telling me if you put Ohio State on a neutral field right now with Georgia, Michigan, Florida State, Washington, Oregon, they win those games? I think that's laughable. Kyle McCord does not have the capability to win those games for the Buckeyes. This is honestly ridiculous. We need to move on, or I'm going to rant about this for about a half hour.
Yeah, let's just call this the CFP rant show. Might as well. We did have Georgia at 2 in our rankings. They're looking convincingly and showing that they can perform without Brock Bowers. But I mean, I still think they're better than this Ohio State team.
Yeah. For our rankings, we had Michigan at 1, Georgia at 2, Florida State at 3, Washington at 4, then Ohio State out at number 5, and Oregon at 6. Like I said, Oregon only at 6 because they have a loss. You have to take into account record, or else what are we doing here? But I think Ohio State definitely looks the worst of those top 5 right now. I know I harped on Washington's defense a lot earlier, but I still think that offense is so good that they could beat this Ohio State team pretty easily.
I agree.
So for me, Ohio State is out of my top 4.
I'm a little sad to see Washington and Oregon come in at 5 and 6. I think if you're a Pac-12 fan or a Washington fan or an Oregon fan, it gives you a lot of false hope. I mean, a lot to, look forward to coming up because it is going to decide who gets in and who doesn't. But, come on.
My concern for this is...
Give the Pac-12 their team.
With Oregon and Washington both out and Ohio State at 1 and Michigan at 3, the danger that sets up is, okay, let's say Michigan wins out and beats Ohio State in the Big Ten title game. They're in. Georgia goes undefeated, they're in. Florida State goes undefeated, they're in. Then if you have a team like Oregon run the table, Ohio State with their only loss to Michigan and Oregon with their only loss to Washington, I think Ohio State gets in, but I think Oregon's the better team.
I did
So I think that's a problem with how these first rankings came out, and I just think it's, like you said, pretty brutal for the Pac-12.
Yeah, if you were to put Kyle McCord and Bo Nix on a field together, I think Bo Nix, 100%. Give me that guy. But that's just week 1. We still have a few more weeks left, so we'll see how the rest of the rankings compare as the season continues. So big rankings. Things are starting to get serious in college football as we've only got a few weeks left. So sad.
Yeah.
We'll check back next week to see how the top 6 matches up after week 10 of college. After the break, we'll head over to the NFL. Don't go anywhere. You're watching Paige and Micah in the PM.
Welcome back to Paige and Micah in the PM. Now let's head over to the pros, where the trade deadline has just passed and a lot of teams made a lot of moves this week. But let's start off. Paige, how did you enjoy your weekend of NFL football?
I had a really great weekend. The Broncos beat the Chiefs. I can now die peacefully. I texted Micah. Everyone needs to know this. I texted Micah at 11:05 a.m. and said, hear me out. The Broncos are going to win today.
And I said, I don't know about that.
And sure enough, the Broncos won.
They did.
Wow, amazing. But Micah, did you enjoy the weekend too?
You know, I did as well. It's crazy. The Chargers also won. It was against the Bears. We don't talk about that.
No.
But they played really well in prime time against the Bears and Tyson Bagent. But it was still really impressive from this Chargers team that just looked lost for most of the year. I still think there's some secondary issues to figure out for LA, but they've looked amazing versus the Bears. But then with your Broncos, the Vance Joseph defense finally did something.
Finally.
Holding the Chiefs to 0 touchdowns.
And only 275 yards of offense for this being the Super Bowl winning team. Didn't look like it to me. Russell Wilson throwing for 114 yards. He did have 3 touchdowns, but this defense just really showed out in a snow game, and that was just, you've got 2 very happy AFC West people right here. Finally.
Also in the AFC West, it broke earlier today that the Raiders fired both head coach Josh McDaniels and their GM as well. I think that's been a long time coming, honestly.
I agree.
Although I will say, free my man Devontae Adams, because he is going through it right now in Vegas, but we'll have to see if the Raiders can turn it around for the rest of the year.
All right, moving over to the AFC East. We had a trade there. Micah, want to tell us about that?
Yes, so the Bills got corner Rasul Douglas from the Packers. Pretty solid corner, and they got him for a 5th and a 3rd. I'm fine with that price. Shore up the Bills secondary, which has been injured a lot this year, so good for them. And after beating the Bucs on Thursday Night Football 24-18, Bills finally starting to build some momentum.
Yeah.
I like where this team is headed right now. And really, the team they have to catch is the Dolphins, who are now 6-2 after beating the Patriots. Although another win versus another bad team.
Yeah, it's the Patriots.
So I'm curious to see once this Dolphins team gets to a hard part of their schedule, how they fare, because they've struggled every time they've played a good team this year. So we'll have to see how they do.
Also in the East, the Jets winning a game that no one wanted to. They beat the Giants 13-10 in overtime. They're now 4-3. Zach Wilson looking a little more promising. 240 yards, 1 touchdown. But it's the Giants. No one wanted to win this game.
Although, player of the game, Thomas Morstead, the punter for the Jets, had 11 punts, averaged 48 yards per punt, had 4 inside the 20, and a long of 55. We respect punters here on Paige and Micah in the PM.
Give some love to the special teams.
So shout out to Thomas Morstead for a great game.
Awesome. Over in the AFC North, the Ravens beat the Cardinals to move to 6-2. They're now tied for the best record in the AFC. Do you think they can win out?
No.
Okay.
No shot they win out. They still have the Bengals on the schedule. This is the NFL. They're not winning out. But I do think Lamar Jackson is looking a lot better this season. You know, a lot of times you see a player get a massive contract and fall off a cliff. Lamar's playing really well.
Yeah.
Then Gus Edwards as well had 3 touchdowns against the Cardinals. So this Ravens offense looks pretty good right now.
The defense looked good too.
The defense does look good as well. I know it was the Cardinals, but this Ravens team, with how badly they beat the Lions the week previous, I like how this team looks right now.
The rest of the division is currently sitting at 4-3, with the Bengals beating the 49ers, the Browns falling to the Seahawks, and the Steelers losing to the Jags.
I know it's fall right now, but it's feeling like winter with how Joe Burr is playing right now.
Chilly.
28 of 32 for 283 and 3 touchdowns. Obviously, whatever injury he was dealing with is gone, and he is back on form. Jamar Chase, 10 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown. Bengals offense overall humming right now, which against this 49ers defense, very impressive, especially on the road. The Browns, they need a quarterback.
Yeah.
Deshaun Watson's been iffy this year. P.J. Walker's not the guy. They lose to Seattle as a result of that. Then the Steelers' offense is like watching a train wreck. It's so awful. Matt Canada does not deserve an offensive coordinator job in the NFL, and I honestly feel bad for Steelers fans having to watch that every week.
Yeah, that was pretty bad, and that's just all I have to say about that. In the South, there was another trade. Micah, want to tell us about that?
Yes, the Jags got Ezra Cleveland, a Viking guard. And so I think that's a pretty solid pickup for them. He wasn't starting, but I think compared to what the Jags have on their offensive line, that's a very good pickup for them. Hopefully you can plug him in and he helps your offensive line, gives Trevor Lawrence a bit more time. The Jags are looking good right now,
Very
6-2, and I think a lot of that you have to give credit to Travis Etienne, who looks amazing this season and kept it up versus the Steelers. 3 catches for 70 yards and a touchdown, then 24 rushes for 79 yards, over 140 total yards in the game. This is his best season in the NFL so far, easily.
I agree. And the dynamic duo of Lawrence and Etienne, they did so good in college, and there's so much chemistry in college. And moving to the NFL, you're with all these new guys. You got to, find how you feel with them. But, I mean, give me Travis and Trevor all day long.
Yeah.
I could watch those guys play forever. Just doing amazing. But also this defense, 4 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 2 picks. I mean,
Saxonville, anyone? It could be back.
It could.
We'll have to see.
The Jags doing really good right now. The Titans moving to 3-4 with a win over the Falcons.
Mayo Man is here, everyone.
he is.
Will Levis has arrived, 19 of 29 for 238 and 4 touchdowns.
4 touchdowns. That's
Super
very
impressive
good.
in this one. They somehow unlocked 2020 DeAndre Hopkins.
Amazing.
4 catches for 128 and 3 touchdowns. So kudos to the Titans in this one, actually being able to get an offense going, and then it's bad loss for the Falcons.
Yeah, but Will Levis could be the franchise guy. We talked a lot about how the Ryan Tannehill injury was going to affect this team and affect this offense. But I mean, Will Levis is showing that.
Could be the guy.
He could be the guy. The Texans giving their Panthers their first win. They do fall to 3-4. And the Colts continuing purgatory with the loss of the Saints.
Yeah, just 2 teams that are kind of lost right now. Texans, I think, are in a much better spot than the Colts are. Obviously, the Colts losing Anthony Richardson for the year, but
doesn't help.
Neither of these teams, I think, are really going to be either at the top end of the draft or in the playoffs. Going to be kind of just that middle of the road range.
Yeah. In the NFC East, the Eagles escaped the Commanders 38-31 and improved to 7-1 on the year. Jalen Hurts looking really good, throwing for 319 yards, 4 touchdowns. A.J. Brown having 8 catches for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, in a close game, but this Eagles offense is pretty good.
A.J. Brown is legit. As you said, 8 catches, 130 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he broke the record for most consecutive 125-plus receiving yard games in a row. So anytime you do that, you're doing something right. I know we've been talking about Tyreek Hill a lot this year for the Dolphins, but give A.J. Brown some love because he's looked amazing. And then the Commanders fall to 3-5, although Sam Howell played well, throwing for nearly 400 yards, had 4 touchdowns to pick. The issue is he's getting no support from his running game. He's going to be getting even less support from his defense now since Washington had a fire sale that we'll be talking about a little bit later. Yeah.
Also in the NFC East, the Cowboys blowing out the Rams to improve to 5-2. A big win in Texas and a much-needed win for this Cowboys team. In the NFC North, we have a trade.
The Lions have acquired Donovan Peoples-Jones from the Browns for a 6th. This trade's kind of weird to me. I don't know that the Lions needed a bunch of receiver help, honestly. And Donovan Peoples-Jones is basically a slower Amon-Ra St. Brown that can't really separate. So I don't really understand this trade, I'm going to be honest. But who knows? Maybe it works out. Maybe he goes off. Maybe I look stupid. You never know what's going to happen. But then the Bears, they traded a 2nd-round pick to Washington for edge rusher Montez Sweat. I think they paid a little too much, honestly, especially when you look at how much other players were traded for at this deadline and with how high that 2nd-rounder from Chicago is going to be. That's going to almost be a 1st-round pick. So a bit weird to me, although they do need edge help, so I kind of understand it. And the Vikings acquiring Josh Dobbs after Kirk Cousins went down with a torn Achilles out for the year. You hate to see that.
Is this his last, was that his last game as a Viking, do we think?
I think it could be. He might go somewhere else in free agency.
I do too. Unfortunate to go out that way, but it happens. Continuing with the North, the Packers offense remained awful, falling to 2-5, and the Bears losing the Chargers, they're still bad, falling to 2-6. And the NFC South, does anyone actually want to win this division, Micah?
Well, I think the Falcons would if Arthur Smith wasn't running the show. I do not understand what he's doing with this team. There was a play in this game, Jonnu Smith throwing a pass to their 3rd-string tight end, and Kyle Pitts was blocking on the play. And if that doesn't just encapsulate the Falcons' usage of their star players, I don't know what does.
Yeah.
That loss to the Titans and Will Levis is a bad loss because even with how well Levis played, that's inexcusable for the Falcons to lose to a quarterback making his first career start.
Yeah, a close game, but a game that they should have won.
And Desmond Ridder finally benched in this one after yet another fumble.
Yep.
So.
The Saints beat the Colts 38-27 to improve to 4-4. I mean, just mid.
Yeah.
Just mid.
That's pretty much what you're going to get from the Saints.
Yeah.
Then the Bucs falling to 3-4 after losing to the Bills. So you have Falcons 4-4, Saints 4-4, Bucs 3-4. So they're all right there, and you could see a team with a losing record make the playoffs again this season.
That would be wild. It would be wild card. That actually wasn't very funny. Sorry, everyone. And then finally, the Panthers won a game, 1-6.
Good for y'all.
Good job. Good job. And to close out the NFC, we have the West. Couple trades, couple big ones.
Yeah, the 49ers, they said, okay, we've lost 3 in a row, and the problem has been our offense. So what are we going to do? We're going to trade for Chase Young.
Yeah.
And they only had to give up a 3rd-round pick to do it. A great edge
steal.
rusher. Yeah, especially when you look at prices like I said, the Bears giving up a 2nd for Montez Sweat. The Niners got a better Washington edge rusher for cheaper. You know, Bears fans are just banging their head against the wall. Even when we get a good player, we don't do it correctly. So, but the Niners, I think, are starting to realize they have a division race on their hands. The Seahawks are now 5-2 and in the division lead, and they traded a 2nd and a 2025 5th for Leonard Williams from the Giants. Very good run defender, something that Seattle desperately needs right now.
Yeah, I mean, we both picked the 49ers to be our undefeated team. Didn't happen, but I think that Chase Young adding to their squad will help rejuvenate them.
Joining back up with Nick Bosa as well, the Ohio State teammates back together.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm just hoping that goes a little bit better for them. The Niners losing 31-17 to the Bengals. They're on a 3-game losing streak after starting 5-0. Just not looking good.
Brock Purdy's looked very off since losing Deebo Samuel. I think that's a big problem. McCaffrey in this game averaged 4.5 per carry, but only got the ball 12 times.
He's carrying this team too, so just not really good stats for him.
And as far as the rest of the division, the Rams got blown out by the Cowboys. They dropped to 3-5. Then the Cardinals dropped to 1-7 after losing to the Ravens. And what's important to note for the Cardinals is they don't have their 1st-round pick in this upcoming draft because they traded it to the Texans. So just a brutal place to be right now for the Cardinals.
Yeah, I mean, if I were the Cardinals, I wouldn't want to be there either. But, oh well.
Yeah.
Oh well. And finally, to end the night, Micah, it's striking midnight time. After some surprising outcomes, who is your team whose time has just run out?
Well, it's got to be the team that finished with -9 net passing yards this week, and that would be the New York Giants.
Yeah.
The Giants are just horrific.
Bad.
They paid so much money to Daniel Jones. He has not been good. Then he got hurt. Tyrod Taylor, he goes in, also not good, also hurt. And now it's Tommy DeVito time, who, breaking news, is not good. So when you have 3 bad quarterbacks on your roster, you can't expect to win anything.
No depth.
Then trading away Leonard Williams, your run defense is going to get worse as well. The secondary has been Swiss cheese. Saquon Barkley's great when he plays, but he's made of glass, always injured. And then the O-line might be the worst part of this team. Evan Neal has not been it. Starting to look like a bust almost. I would say still give him another year to develop, but if he hasn't improved by this time next year, you really have to consider replacing him.
Yeah, having to punt 13 times and having negative passing yards, which I would just like to know is the fewest in a game by any team since 2000.
Yeah.
Neither of us were alive in 2000.
No. Thankfully, I didn't have to watch that then.
Yeah. But that's not good.
No.
And I think the Giants at this point, you just focus on next season and how you can improve and not be as bad as you are right now.
For sure. Speaking of focusing on the future, that is it for tonight. Thank you for watching episode 4 of Paige and Micah in the PM, and we'll see you next week for our current favorite talking point, football. I'm Micah Farmer.
And I'm Paige Hunter.
And this has been
Paige and Micah in the PM.
Woohoo.